Do you ever have one of those days where you just want to be left alone and like you're parking your Bugatti and then all of a sudden women start coming up to you hounding you because they see you have a nice car and they're like, oh, what's your name? What do you do for a living? Nah, me neither. Alright, but I imagine that's what it's kind of like for both the super rich quote unquote alpha male and the somewhat attractive, moderately standard woman, right? If she looks good to an extent, I assume she gets that kind of attention. Now, is that a good thing? Not necessarily. But is it a bad thing? Not necessarily either, right? Now, get into that in just a second.
See clear so them sell out them soul. But make them more money, can't buy life.
So I was watching a Hodge Twins episode today and I saw that they had this quote unquote rich dad on there and he's talking about how women should be gold diggers and he's basically teaching his daughters that they should never go 50-50 with men and all this other nonsense, right?
When you start dating, what he gonna have to do?
Work with my dad?
Are you spending 50-50 with anybody?
No.
Why?
Because you don't.
Come on, see, common sense for her. Y'all gotta understand, the reason why I be so stern on paying 100% of everything because I have two beautiful baby girls, all right? I got a 14-year-old and I got a 2-year-old. And guess what? They ain't gonna be dealing with that bullshit that most women gotta deal with in today's time. They not gonna be out here struggling, you know, trying to figure out how they gonna eat their next meal because they deal with the wrong man. No, you got to pay 100% for everything, all right? I'm raising them the same way that they see their dad doing. I've been paying all the bills since day one. My wife has never touched a bill since 2014, and that's the year that I met her. Pay 100% of everything because if you don't, you are not considered a real man. Stay by yourself until you're able to provide 100%. That's all I'm saying. You can't do that, you don't need to be with nobody. The relationship math is if you can't take care of yourself, you damn sure can't take care of this person. Stay by yourself and prioritize yourself.
Alright, I'm not even a give smoke kind of guy, right? Because truthfully, I have no business even talking about this kind of stuff, right? I'll tell you why in a minute. But this guy is full of shit, right? For multiple reasons. If you just look at how he looks, right? He looks like a wannabe rapper, right? A real rich person doesn't carry themselves in that manner. Before we get into the whole overarching topic, right, which I'm not really sure which part we're going to actually dig in as the main flesh of this conversation, because there's so many, just hearing that guy kind of triggered me a bit, and there's so much stuff I want to say now. And I'm like, raw, bruv, this guy's a dickhead. Like, all right, so off the bat, this guy is broke shaming, right? Or poor shaming, which is what you find a lot of the wannabe 1%ers do a lot on the internet, right? The true 1%ers couldn't give a damn about what the 99% of people are doing, right? You don't see Elon Musk pulling up in front of you in some iced out fucking car with a lot of chains and shit, talking in a camera, right, to the masses about how much money he has and all of this other shit, right? The real rich don't carry themselves like this. So I just want to say that off the bat. And then to the broke shaming part of it, if someone ever treats you like a brokey, or they say that you're less than because you don't have X amount of money or you meet a certain threshold of their wants, right? Remember this, 99% of us are broke, right? Yeah, and I'm not saying broke like we're close to poverty and we're going to be in a bloody cardboard box by the end of the week. But no, 99% of us are not rich, right? And they're not even close to wealth, right? So just to put that to the side for a second, right? Because I haven't got the stats and figures off the head because I'm a little bit triggered, right? All right, like that's one thing. Now, allow me to give this man a little bit of grace, right? I'm sure he worked hard at whatever it is he does to make sure he can provide for his family and that they have a decent life, right? Because I'm sure he's not a bad person overall, right? I hope, because I like to believe that the best of humanity is still out there, regardless of the things they say on the internet, right? Let's just give this guy a little bit of grace. Let's just say he's probably a good guy, probably worked really hard to get where he's got to, and now he has a certain view of life that you could say is more traditional, which truly isn't. It's like it's a manufactured viewpoint, right? Which we'll talk about at another time maybe, right? Because that's all like capitalism, politics, economy, financial stuff, right? That makes this man, this black American man at that, believe in 2024 he's entitled to have this kind of view of the world, right? But anyway, I'm sure he worked really hard to get where he's got to, right? And now that he has kids, he wants his kids to have the very best of life, right? But he's saying he wants his kids to have the very best of life off another man's dime, what's the point when you're already daddy Warbucks? Your kids should always be fine, right? There's never going to be a need for a man to come and actually swoop them off their feet in terms of financial gains, right? You might want that, right? But you're not royalty, right? You're not the Rockefellers. You're not like Wu-Tang, like my seed marry his seed. That's how we keep Wu-Tang money in the family, right? You're not that, right? Probably not, all right? Yeah, so I understand that you want your kids to have the best of life, right? Everybody does. But the reality is this. Would I want my kids to have that same kind of mentality, right? Now, let's just say I have daughters too, right? I want my daughters to be taken care of, right? But I'm more concerned about the character of the man that my daughters get with than his financial status. Even though, right, I don't want my daughters to struggle and I don't want them to be broke, I also want them to be safe, right? Now, there's two types of man, right? When we're talking in this particular topic, right? When you get into the world of gold diggers and women that are seeking hypergamy, you know, that evil word, the KS and the Fresh and Fit talk about hypergamy, right? What does hypergamy mean? Women that seek men of higher financial status, right? They go from level to level based on what they can attain from you, right? There's two type of men in that world, right? You got your dominant alpha, right? And then you got your pussy old simp. Would I want my daughter to be with either of those guys? Potentially one of them, but the other one, not so much, right? The one that you probably thinking, right, which you'd be right to assume, the one I'd rather my daughter be with is the pussy old simp, right? But that being said, what is the downfall of teaching your daughters to go after these kind of men, right? One, the simp is not going to ever have a backbone, right? He's not actually going to provide for your daughter psychologically, physically even, right? He may provide for her financially, but all that does for her is just give her a meal ticket, right? She's never going to have to take actual responsibility for her own life and her own decisions because she'll technically be inheriting another parent and not just a normal parent. She'll be inheriting a dickhead, right? Yeah? And then the second guy is the dominant alpha. Yeah, I'm going to pay for everything, right? You're never going to have to pay for anything, right? But you do what I say, when I say, how I say, right? Do you want your daughter living under that kind of tyranny? No, you don't, right? So you got to be careful when you preach these kinds of things, right? Now, you got to ask yourself, as that father speaking, just his image, which of the two do you think he leans more towards? Right? All right, this might sound a little bit ignorant, but personally, right, I'm not going to raise my sons to think like that, right? I'm not going to raise my daughters to think like that. In fact, I'm going to make my daughters so difficult for you men out there, right? That it's going to drive you crazy, right? And I'm going to make my sons so smart and so intelligent that not one woman from any of the families will be able to knock them off the path that they're on, all right? That's the way you should be thinking. Now, I say this with all susness aside, right? Take those sangy thoughts out of your mind when I say this, right? But if you, right, if you're a man watching this, if you were a woman, right, what would you do? Would you be more inclined to be a gold digger, or would you be more inclined to be an independent woman, right? Now, just take a step back and remove yourself from your man-like thinking for a second, because you're not a woman, right? Just take a step back and remove the way you normally think about things, right? I'm not going to say women are illogical because they're clearly not, but just think, right? Which of those two roads would you be more inclined to walk down, right? Chances are you'd be more inclined to walk down the gold digger path, right? Because you realize less work, more results, right? But the truth is that can only be allowed to run if men allow it to run, right? Of course, we already know there's more women to men, but if they're all just gonna flock to the rich ones, right, or the famous ones, or whatever, like the hood ones, right, then it's better for you as a man that's not inside of any of those categories and patinas, right? Because you've got rid of all of the bad ones or potentially bad ones, right? Do you know how many divorces end over that shit? A man loses his job, financial disagreements, right? Woman cheats for X, Y, and Z reasons, right? A lot of marriages end, right? And it don't just affect the two people in a relationship, it affects their children. It affects their community, right? So if that is the path that a woman wants to pick, leave her to pick that path, right? But if she gets the good ending or the bad ending, it's her business, right? Now, when you reach the point where you got your Bugatti, right, and you're getting bothered when you pulled up, then you can decide if you want to play the game or not play the game, right? But until that point, just let them do what they want to do, right? And just recognize your best tactic is to focus on what you want to do, right? And if you can, find a quote unquote good woman, right? But if you're like me, you probably got trust issues because of the shit you see in life, right? So take that and just think about it. If you was a woman, you'd probably go down the gold digger route. Although, right, if you're raising women, you'll want them to go down the independent woman route, which is just as problematic for a lot of men, right? But not the right men. There's something to be said for males' tendency to peacock, right? What is peacocking? It's basically a term we took from nature and of course from the actual bird that is a peacock, right? It's showing off to attract female attention, right? And it's a very important tactic for mating or mating strategy in nature, right? Both for humans and for other mammals, right? Or whatever. It's important that you understand that. As much as you're probably like me and you don't want to participate in this, like the materialist, the hyper materialist fuckery that is our current reality in 2024, you probably don't want to participate in it to a certain level, right? But there's something to be said for that peacocking and attracting women or potential partners. You kind of have to play that game unless you're dealing with someone who's more intelligent or thinks a bit like you. Now, what do I mean by that? Like I commented on the man's appearance, right, of this so-called rich black man in America. Real rich, you can't see it, right? You can't see real wealth, right? True wealth, true richness is being free to not have to play the charades, right? To not have to peacock, right? You're not supposed to know how much money I have, alright? You're not supposed to know how much this shirt costs. You're not supposed to know by my appearance that I'm successful. You're supposed to find out, alright? Knowing that, there's another way to play the game, alright? Now, like I said, you've got peacocking versus being low key, right? Sure, you may not get the baddies, right? The quote unquote baddies, right? But when you really think about it, past the point of sex and having other people be envious of your ability to obtain said baddie, right? She has no value, right? She just looks somewhat good, right? But like I'm at that age now where moderate women, right, let's just say voluptuous to an extent, but not overtly in your face with it, is more sexy to me than all out. Alright, so when you understand that, right, just the same way where a woman could be more moderate with her dress and her style, right, and it's little hints and things you have to pick up on, you have to know, right, what that means to be able to see it, right, and actually recognize it for what it is and say, actually, she's got ahead of her. When a woman understands that low-key, subtle hints of success, or not even just success, like just a personality thing, right? This guy, right, you don't know him, right? You've never met him, right? He drives a simple car, he dresses really fucking simple, and he doesn't stand out. He's not peacocking, right? But his bank account is fucking crazy, right? The way he moves in reality, his relationships, his connections are real, right? Adverse to, because it's not always, the peacockers aren't always just for show and no substance. Sometimes they do have a certain level of substance, and I'll explain when it's time to do that, right? Why people do that, right? Adverse to the guy that's just showing it all on the outside, right? Which means he usually has very little on the inside, right? What's in the bank account is a bit desperate. It's a lot of credit usage. It's a lot of bad relationships. It's a lot of envy, jealousy, because he's in a limelight, right? He can't actually trust the people around him, right? Now, coming from a somewhat hood estate, right, I understand the politics that surround that being in the limelight, right? Whether you're famous or infamous, you have to be a certain type of person to even want that energy and that attention around you, right? Because it's draining. And not only is it draining, it's dangerous, right? So it's a win-win, right? If the women that are like that or just like-minded like that, and I know a lot of good women get influenced by bad women, just as men, a lot of good men get influenced by bad men, right? To want that kind of person or feel a little bit of envy or fear of missing out kind of thing, or, oh, she's managed to find some guy that's peacocking, but my guy's just normal, right? Or the guys that pay attention to me are just normal, right? It's understandable why they might think and feel like that, but the truth is, you don't actually want that energy in your life, right? It's dangerous. It's anxious energy, right? The showing of the shit you own, where I come from, it's not a good idea to do that, right? But like I said, there's a reason and a certain season for that, if you will, in life, right? Some of you might get that out of your system where you're young and you're in your teen years and you're flossing, you're doing whatever you're doing on the street, or you're working a serious job, whatever it is you do, and you get that kind of peacocking shit out of your system, right? But a lot of men, because of the like financial situation in most countries in the world, don't get to experience that level, right, of somewhat success or female attention until they're in their late 30s, 40s and onwards, right? So they have what's called a midlife crisis, kind of like what that guy was just looking like, right? I don't actually know his age, and I'm just using him as an example, right? But there are certain points in life where you've done the humble work, you've laid your foundation, you've made sure all your assets are in order, and you're in a safe enough place to show a little bit now, enjoy a little bit now. But you know, right, an intelligent person knows when to scale it back, right? There's only so much you need to show, because the rest just invites bad energy and danger.
Like, me and my boyfriend, we're good.
You're good, like that?
Yeah, like that.
Well, I mean, like, we can be like that just like as friends.
I mean, okay, yeah, no, I think I'm good. I'm just gonna put the groceries in. You have a nice day, though.
You said you had a boyfriend.
I mean, but like, you can be friends, right?
That's not what you said earlier. You said like, oh yeah, you know, I'm kind of late. I gotta go see my boyfriend. So like, why are you approaching me now?
Because, I don't know, I just thought, like, you came up to me obviously for a reason, so...
Yeah, I wanted to like be your friend.
I hate the internet sometimes, you know, but actually I love the internet at the same time, because it just like pokes holes in this fake reality we've been existing in since God knows when, right? If God exists. Although they're skits and they're low-key staged, right? One of the things that has helped poke holes and shatter this illusion of not just men and women is the rise of the gold digger pranks.
I don't see a ring on your finger.
Yeah, babe, where's my ring?
I wasn't trying to start nothing, but you know.
That's not the right time. What is this?
You want to grab a drink? I mean, you know, like.
You want to grab a drink?
Yeah, like you guys, we can.
Yeah, let's go.
Maybe I was just being too friendly. I'm sorry. Thank you. I appreciate you. Yeah. It's not over. Just watch. It was right down the street. I just don't have my phone, so I'm not sure. You want to just show me where it's at?
Yeah, I could just show him on my phone.
What are you trying to do? You know what I'm saying? Like, she's, bro, watch out. Bro, watch out, dog. Okay, well, why are you trying to run up on me? What's good?
I'm getting your car. What you mean? What's good?
I understand, but you know how it is. She wants to come with me. I get you, man. With her.
No, you good, bro. Hop in. Don't even worry about it. 3 years. That's what we're doing.
You didn't put a ring on my finger.
Listen, bro. Just relax for a second. Listen. Just relax. There's a camera right over there. Don't look. We're exposing gold diggers. Listen. We got us a gold digger. That happened to me. That's why I want to make these videos. Check it out. So I should keep this open because he's gonna come with me. There's a camera right over there. We're exposing gold diggers. Looks like we got us a gold digger. Yeah, my girl did the same thing to me, and I don't fuck with that. So.
Babe, I was kidding.
Yeah, you were kidding. You got all the way in the car. That's cool.
I'll see the breakfast open.
So yeah, as you've just seen, some men, and particularly YouTubers and content creators, see this as an easy strategy to blow up their channels and get traction, right? Because they're playing on the most base binary subject of them all, right? Man gets woman, right? 0 and 1, 0 and 1. It's base, it's primal, right? We want to know more about how to get women if you can't, or if you can, right? Because it's how we populate the planet, right? And that being said, in every built up country on the planet right now, right, the most economically thriving countries are all struggling with population, right? Not overpopulation, underpopulation, right? And this kind of phenomena of the whole man gets woman rat race bullshit online is contributing to that, right? People aren't wanting to get into relationships because they're seeing the reality of what can happen now that you have technology in your hand, now that you can walk down the street and actually catch two people fucking their significant others over, right? Anyway, back to the point. The reason these gold digger pranks, right, are so dangerous and powerful at the same time is because it's shattering the illusion that a lot of men have about women, right? Because most of us grew up with mothers and sisters and cousins and shit and aunties, and we were always told, oh, you gotta look out for women, you gotta basically do everything this man is saying his daughter should be looking for, right? And you just gotta be a bit of a pussyhole for when it comes to women. But when it comes to men, no, you better be top smoke, right? You better be willing to go to jail, right? And at the same time, when it comes to women, you better be willing to go to jail for them too, right? That to one side, right? Because that's like a trad conversation that we can deal with at a later point in this conversation. Most men are raised to look at women as like they have not only inherent value, they also have like an inherited valor, right? To say like they have this high status of honor, right? And they don't fuck about. They're righteous, they're true, they're honest, they're pure, right? But the reality is, women are just as bad as men, right? If you want to know like just a little like a base example that I often think of, right, that just keeps me grounded a little bit, right? If women didn't do pornography, what would men do, right? If women were these innocent, pure, righteous, you know, God-like creatures on earth, right? Just blessing men and bestowing men with their grace just by existing, right? Which they kind of do, right? How would there ever be women that are willing to get all of these kinds of crazy shit done to them on camera, right? And be satisfied and happy with you seeing it, right? So just think about that shit. Now, of course, with the C19 era and people being indoors, we got to witness the rise of the online OnlyFans wannabe porn stars, right? Oh, I can make money because men lust after me, all right? Or men saying, oh, I can make money because women lust after me, right? And you saw that through their content and the lens, right? So from that point, it's been slowly ramping ever since. Not to say it didn't exist before, but like I said, you would have to have been really in the world of pornography. And if we're being honest, the world of pornography is human trafficking, right? So the fact that you can just jump online and maybe not even on purpose, just by accident come across these kinds of women and these kinds of men does kind of change society's outlook on male-female relationships, right? And we're just talking like traditional, what we call heterosexual relationships, right? Because we're not even going to get into the dilution of that when it comes to different gender identities and all that kind of stuff, because it gets even more seedy and difficult to navigate, right? And not even being like, not to be like picking one group out over another, but if you just look at male-female relationships, right, and how like the violence and the controlling shit, right, translates over to female lesbian relationships, right? If you just look at that shit, where you have the more manly or dominating woman, right, they perpetrate the same kind of alpha domineering man traits onto the more feminine woman in their relationships too, right? So this shit is deeper than just man woman, right? It's a psychological thing.
The single message is buy this, do this. It's going to make you feel better. You're going to like it. If you're not doing it, you're probably not very hip. This is going to solve the problem for you 30,000 times.
Systemically, advertising works better on people who are lonely and afraid.
It's a kind of a form of reverse therapy. You know, you go to a therapist because he wants to resolve your unconscious conflicts and make you feel better about yourself. But media has exactly the opposite orientation.
You need to create tension in the viewer, conscious tension and anxiety, so that they look to a product for relief. If people are happy, they're not going to buy stuff they don't need.
There's been memos that have been circulated, where insider advertising executives have said it's our job to make women feel bad about themselves.
We really believe that this is the way a woman should look. This version of some guy's marketing plan that he set up.
Like, oh, look at that pretty ad. I like the boobs I'm looking at, but they're being engineered.
We can look at things like anorexia and bulimia, and as far as I'm concerned, you can look at that and say this is a media-driven event.
Our families are being destroyed. I mean, we've never in the history of humanity been under an assault, because we've never had mass media like we do today.
Right, it's a psychological thing. It's an in-training thing to make you think and act like this, right? And that comes into my gripes with media and all that kind of shit too. But hey, that's old man talk, right? That's just fucking why you guys up there in the mountains with fucking food rations and guns talk, right? So let's forget about that. But the fact that you can just go on YouTube and see these guys doing these gold digger pranks, and you'll see a title like gold digger leaves boyfriend for rich man, instantly regrets, right? Instant karma. Like you see this shit, right? Even though a lot of it stays, right? It turns on a switch inside of the innocence, right? The innocent man, the innocent woman, and it makes them realize, rah, the world is actually fucked, right? It's so cold out here, right? Like there's really no love, right? And do you know what? What men want most out of anything, right, is relationships, right? Why do you think fellowships and shit like that and societies exist? It's all about relations, right? Different people interlocking to do things and achieve things, right? The world is built foundationally on relationships, right? And what is the foundation of any good relationship? Is trust. Right, so if there's no trust and there's no loyalty, there's no relationship, right? Therefore, we fail to progress as human beings. So if you can get online, right, and you don't even have to get online, because even myself as a child, I experienced seeing certain things that just made me think, raw, right? The world is like this, I thought it was like that, right? But it's really like this, right? Do you know what I'm saying? So that shattering that illusion, right, of how women are supposed to be, right, or how saintly, pure, good, and righteous they're supposed to be. It's not that it's dangerous, because as an adult you want to be aware of as much truth as you can, right, and dismiss as much lies and illusion and delusion as you possibly can, right?
You, as someone who has envisioned and perhaps seen and perhaps touched an elephant, can imagine someone walking up and grabbing the trunk and feeling its texture and its movement, the fact that it's animated and part of a living thing, and go, I understand how that person with that limited interaction can perceive this being as a snake. I know how and why they got it wrong. And so you look at it and say, this is their truth. Well, what they described was true. And it's true absolutely and independent of their assessment, which is to say, if you are unable to see the entirety of the elephant and you are only given the option to inspect its trunk, and you cannot see but feel, you can feel the musculature, and it would be, at least within the bounds of reason, to describe it as snake-like. Does that mean it's just a subjective truth? No. But if the person went on to say that, I know I felt a giant snake, well, they would be objectively wrong. And we can understand how they could subjectively come to that sort of conclusion. But when they're describing the elephant, they're correct, and what they're saying is the truth, and the same is true for all the others. Now, the fallacy of composition is when one wrongly assumes that the whole of something is identical to individual parts. Like if a tire is rubber, and you conclude that, well, a tire is part of a car, therefore a car is rubber, despite the fact that the evidence doesn't show that. Fallacy of composition is common when we get into those areas where we don't know. We're going to extrapolate, and we do this for a reason. We can't be absolutely certain about anything. Today is pretty much the same as yesterday. Tomorrow's going to be pretty much the same as today. That is why inference and induction work. The inductive reasoning is generally reliable, but not absolutely reliable. The inferences that we make, that process, which is science, by the way, uses deductive reasoning to lead to inferences about the general, but we don't just say that this property, being a part of the whole, is also a property of the whole. That's where we make a mistake, and yet, all the time, with regularity, someone will email me and say, well, I agree to disagree. Okay, I agree that we do disagree, but the people who tend to say, let's agree to disagree, just want out of an argument because their side can no longer produce any evidence or any reason to think that it's true.
That is one of the things you're going to have to accept, right? Things, I don't even want to say things aren't how they used to be, because God knows how things used to be. They were probably exactly the same. We just didn't have a guy with a smartphone filming it, right? You know? So I don't want to say things ain't how they used to be. It's just that there's easily the social media spin on this to say, right, you have more access to more people, right? So for every, like, I'm just giving bullshit statistics like everybody does, right? So for like every one woman, there's probably 5 men to her or whatever, right? And especially translate, if she's a good looking woman, it probably goes up a bit more on there in her DMs, and they're catcalling her in the street, and they're trying to steal her off her man and all this kind of shit, right? That existed before the internet, but it just wasn't so in your face, right? Do you know what I'm saying? So let's go back to the main topic, right? About this father teaching his daughters to be gold diggers. Like I said, I give him a pass to a certain degree, right? Because I understand that. And if we like go back in time a bit, men married off their daughters to other families for political reasons, for power, for financial gains, right?
The practice of taking dowry in India is still extremely common. Research shows that between 1960 and 2008, dowry was paid in 95% of marriages. Despite being first passed in 1961, anti-dowry laws have failed to prevent the practice, which is common across different classes and castes, and even bridges the rural-urban divide. So where does this practice originate from? Scholars trace it back to the concept of stridhan, prevalent among upper caste Hindu groups in ancient India. Under the Mikakshara system in Hindu law, a woman was not entitled to inherit her parents' wealth. A handsome dowry was considered a pre-mortem inheritance that helped prevent the division of the family estate while providing her with some social and economic security. It was in colonial India that this changed. New laws, especially those regarding land tenure, increased the economic value of men in society and made women more dependent on them. As a result, this dowry practice went from being a voluntary exchange between families and their daughters to a demand for a compulsory economic transfer from the bride to the groom's family. The obligation to provide a sizable dowry at the time of marriage then turns a woman into a financial burden for her parents. And this has vast and worrying implications. It plays a huge role in son preference in households, and in extreme cases even leads to sex-selective abortions and female infanticide. On the other hand, a woman's husband and in-laws feel entitled to this dowry, making her more prone to violence or abuse if she is unable to fulfill their dowry demands. According to the 2019 report of the National Crime Records Bureau, a woman becomes a victim of dowry death roughly every hour, and the Asian Women's Human Rights Council estimated that every year, the practice of dowry is implicated in the deaths of 25,000 women between the ages of 15 and 34. Scholars have observed that in India, marriage is seen as a market in which people bargain for a spouse who would give them the maximum social and material gains. Society forcibly ties women's social status to their ability to secure a successful husband by depriving them of the opportunity to become financially independent or the space to explore their aspirations outside marriage.
So in certain parts of the world, instead of it being money, it may have been cattle, it may have been farming resources, it may be an agreement for this piece of land. Like, all these kinds of things have happened in the past because we used to operate on more of a bartering system, a trust system, until we replaced our trust system with a piece of paper that says we trust that this piece of paper has the value of what you're offering to us, you know? Did you know 1 out of 5 women are celibate for more than 5 years at a time? Anyway, right, so a part of the origins of the idea of gold diggery, or just not even paying for sex per se, paying for relationships, comes from this idea of dowry. Right now, a dowry traditionally goes from the bride's family to the bridegroom's family, which means the bride's family pays the husband's family in property or in money, right? In some places it's done in reverse, right? So in some Muslim cultures it would be the husband's family that pays the wife's family, right? Like, they will support them financially or through property in X, Y, and Z, right?
So just a clarification, a dowry is different from a bride price. A dowry is the money that the woman's family brings into the marriage. So it's not necessarily paid to the man, it's actually paid to the couple. The bride price is the wealth that the man is giving to the family of the woman. You know, there's a huge amount of discussion happening about the value of a woman, the rights of a woman. So the critics are saying that you're putting a monetary value to a woman. But many cultures that are still observing either a dowry or bride price, but specifically a bride price, are sort of clarifying that you're not buying the woman. It is, number one, in traditional society, not necessarily just Asia, but in traditional society, the man is supposed to be the provider. So that is an act, the ultimate proof the man is putting forward to prove that he deserves to marry the woman, because he can give you such gifts, he can give this much gift to the family. That means he can provide for the woman. The other is sort of a thank you for raising the woman that he is now about to marry and is about to build a family with.
That whole way of thinking, and not to disrespect it, it's a traditional way, and some people like their traditional ways, right? They don't question the past because they don't want to, right? But that whole trading property with relationship, it's partly political, it's partly for power, and it's partly financial. But one of the most overlooked parts of that all, right, is that this comes from a time when women were seen as property, right? And not just women, right? Certain races, right? Particularly mine, right? That kind of thinking is involved in all of that, right? Payment for people, right? Payment for relationship, payment for access, right? To be able to do what you want, right? Although that works for some people, it clearly doesn't work for all of us, right? That being said, what do I think of the whole gold digger phenomenon, right? Now, in life, I've met a few girls that are gold diggers, right? Even one told me directly that she's a gold digger, right? Fair enough. But what it says to me truly is that they don't have any personal value. They don't see their own value, if they do have any, right? And they also don't have any personal responsibility to their own needs, right? They've been grown up thinking that someone else is going to take care of their shit for them. They rack up debt, they need a bailout, right? They get in trouble, they need a bailout, right? They lose the house, they stay with a friend, right? This is the kind of mindset, right? And I'm not talking down on women per se, because men do this shit too. But the problem is, with the gold diggery function, right? And I hate to be all KS about it, right? But what do you bring to the quote unquote table, right? What is the value of the relationship that I receive, right? Is it what all men want, right? That trust, that loyalty? It can't be, right? Because you can't buy that, and I can't pay for that, right? Because it wouldn't be trust and it wouldn't be loyalty then, would it, right? You might say, oh, she brings sex, right? Okay, but sex is a mutual interaction, actually. As long as you do it well, both people should get something out of it, right? Do you know what I'm saying? So it can't be that, right? So let's knock that off the table too, right? We'll say, oh, it's a clean house, right? It's child rearing. Well, we could pay someone to do that. Both of those, right? It's 2024, right? Your wife doesn't actually have to have your kids if you don't want her to, or she don't want to, all right? So we could take that off the table too, right? Now that comes down to a thing of, okay, so I've got a bit of money, right? I've got some shit that you want, right? Why should I let you close enough to me to allow you to have access to the shit that you want? Think about that, right? Just have a hard think about that. I know there's millions, if not billions at this point, of TikTokers and YouTubers all talking about the same shit, right? But just think about that. Now, I rate what he said at the end of his little tirade, right? About if you ain't got it, right, don't bother getting involved with anybody, right? Fair enough, right? Because that way of thinking plagued me from my early 20s till now, right? And it kind of helped me to keep me on the right track, keep me focused and not spurring off, worrying about this girl, that girl, right? It helped me to keep focused because I always knew to myself, right? I had my little flings when I was younger and shit, but I always knew if I can just focus, right, on one thing, achieving my goal, right, all the other shit will come. You know, like they say, if you get to the end of the race line, the women will show up at the end, right? You focus on the money, the women will come later. What's that Currency song? That song, right? I knew that to be true, right? In my personal experiences, watching other people's lives and just growing up in the place I grew up, right? Where people are constantly just fucking each other over, right? I knew I'd rather not be involved with anybody at all and have my peace, right? Have my focus, than be spurging out, trying to run behind different people to prove that I have some value that they can't see, right? So knowing that, I always had that same kind of no finance, no romance, right? And that's my fault, right? Because of my own traditional thinking, like my own indoctrination, right? If I can't provide, then I don't need a bride, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, yes, if it was just a thing of sex, I could get it if I wanted it, right? I could pay for it if I wanted it, but it's not that, right? You want a wife, you want someone that you can trust, that's going to be loyal, that you can build with, right? Now, if like, God willing, right, I get to the end of the gold brick road, right, and there's a pot of gold there, right, and I reach there, and then suddenly all these women just start popping up, right, I'm not going to trust any of them. Right, the chances are I'm gonna try and go back to my old hometown, right? Find some girl I liked in high school and just be like, hey, if your life's not too fucked up, right, and you ain't too ran through, do you want to come up here with me, right? Because you actually know me, right? That's what's gonna happen. And then all the other ones that just pop up and they're like, oh yeah, we supported you, right? I'm just gonna be like, yeah, f you, right? You want some money, right? You want some spotlight, right? That is exactly how it happens, right? And you either end up like the two people I said. You either end up like the simp, trick, or the alpha dominant. Like, you remember how you treated me? Now every woman I meet is gonna have to pay for your sins, right? That's how it happens.